The state television company Western Armenia represents the most important news for today. Good day. Today's broadcast. The Republic of Western Armenia continues struggle for the rights of Artsakh and the people of Artsakh. Islamized Armenians. The Turkish court considered the expression genocide committed against Armenians to be within freedom of speech. Discussion dedicated to reversing the consequences of Artsakh genocide in the Congress building. Armenian identity. The short documentary film with the episode about the pogroms of the Armenians in Baku won an Oscar. The collective monograph Megalithic Culture of Artsakh was published. The Republic of Western Armenia continues the struggle for the rights of Artsakh and the people of Artsakh. On the platform of social media were spreading the news on the subject that Eastern Armenia should apply to the International Court of Human Rights within the framework of the Genocide Convention against Baku. But instead we hear discussions about changing the constitution, and this conversation became more active when the former ambassador of Eastern Armenia with special assignments, Edmond Marukyan, emphasized as following. The mentality that Eastern Armenia will literally show goodwill and Baku will appreciate it and show goodwill itself, it did not work. It is not working and it will not work. These days the National Assembly building is being demolished in Stepanagar. That is, if Baku had a plan that Armenia should live there, it should not have been done. But Eastern Armenia does not officially respond to such phenomena. Marukyan emphasized, adding that the problem of Armenians of Artsakh cannot be the internal affairs of Baku. Against this background, news began to circulate in the press of Eastern Armenia that the Armenian side has agreed to fulfill another absurd demand of Baku, that is to withdraw from all international courts the lawsuit filed against Baku. Moreover, Baku does not give up its claim, but the elite of Eastern Armenia instructed the officials of the Armenian side to prepare applications to give up the claims against Baku. Against these actions, Western Armenia continues to struggle for the rights of Artsakh and the people of Artsakh alone. The office of the first president of Western Armenia, Agatangeghos, continues the legal proceedings regarding the material and physical damages caused to the forcibly displaced families from Artsakh. Agatangeghos continues to collect applications and necessary documents from Artsakh citizens. Western Armenia is not afraid to declare that Artsakh has nothing to do with Baku, and the meaning of all claims is to prove that Artsakh is Armenian and the people of Artsakh are indigenous. The Republic of Western Armenia has not been silent, will not be silent, and is struggling for the whole world to inform about the problems of the people of Artsakh. In its previous series of articles, Western Armenia TV stated that the conquerors who invaded the Armenian highlands in different periods adopted the policy of forcibly assimilation of local indigenous people, including Armenians, and forced conversation with one of the main methods of their implementation. Assimilation in the state founded by the Turkish tribes who invaded the Armenian highlands and the region in the 11th century, mainly proceeded after Devshmar through the forced Islamization, the victims of which were the native non-Muslim peoples. Various methods were used for the forced religious conversion of Armenians, both death threats and tax, legal and harsh persecution, policies, etc. Accepting the imposed Islam that part of the Armenians over time for various reasons, willingly or unwillingly, also moved away from their mother roots and relatives professing Christianity, which ultimately led to their partial or complete assimilation. One of the main reasons for this is that, as in the past, as often nowadays, religious affiliation has been prioritized over ethnicity, and people have been disseminated according to that principle. Accordingly, the concepts of Armenian and Christian were equated, and the concept of non-religious Armenian was excluded. Accordingly, the concept of Armenian and Christian were equated, and the concept of non-religious Armenian was excluded. Orientalist Sahakyan told the correspondent of Western Armenia TV that the Christianity was not only a religion for Armenians, but also a worldview, the basis of national existence. That's why the change of faith is medieval. Armenian was almost as powerful as national face-off. To join a different religion means to change nationality. Being a Christian and an enlightened one at that was seen as a standard of Armenianness. Conversation was therefore labeled as apostasy and treason. It is a well-known fact that the forced Islamization of Armenians was especially large after the invasion of Turkish tribes into Asia Minor and the Armenian highlands. The Turkish court considered the expression genocide against Armenians to be within the freedom of speech. The legal proceedings initiated against the former president and members of the Agatangeghos Chamber of Advocates for the phrase genocide committed against Armenians have come to an end. As reported by Mesopotamia Agency, the court decided that during the commemorative event related to April 24, 1915, by the former members of the Agatangeghos Chamber of Advocates, the phrase genocide committed against Armenians is included in freedom of speech. It should be noted that during the event dedicated to the memory of the genocide against Armenians, organized by the former president and members of the Agatangeghos Chamber of Advocates, they used the phrase genocide against the Armenians several times and urged the Turkish authorities to recognize it. After this event, legal proceedings were stated against the organizers of the memorial event and the lawyers who made the phrase genocide committed against Armenians on the charge of humiliating the Turkish nation, country and state organs. On the evening of March 12, from 6 to 8 p.m., a discussion dedicated to reversing the consequences of genocide committed against Artsakh will take place in the hall of the Rainbow building of the Congress. Representatives will give speeches on the possibilities of the safe return of the forcibly displaced Armenians from Artsakh, and the main speaker will be the executive director of the Lemkin Institute, Eliza von Schouten of Fork. Armenian identity, Hamshans, Christianity and Islam. Christianity began to spread in the Armenian geographical region from the 1st century, but since the Armenian kings did not accept Christianity for many years, the Christians had to hide their identity and suffer hardships. And in 301, Christianity is officially accepted as the national religion. Historian Yerevan writes that the Armenian community, the ancestor of the Hamshan people, migrated to Hamshan 789 and 790. Therefore, when the Armenian community came to the region, it was already Christian. Before the establishment of Ottoman rule, this topic was not much discussed. And we can say that after this religion fell under the Ottoman rule as a result of the settlement of the Muslim population on the one hand and the tax policy on the other hand, the population of the region began to become Islamized. In 1540, 48% of Hamshan's population was Muslim and 61% was not Muslim in the records of the geographical registers. Ajarian writes in his works Analysis of Hamshan dialect that at the beginning of the 20th century there were 2,000 Christians and slightly more Muslim Hamshans. It is known that there were small inhabited communities in the Hamshan region, but it had the opposite result. Some of the tribes living in Hamshan, due to some problems with the local residents, settled outside Hamshan region in Childir. Among these groups, there were Christian groups and other communities, which the Hamshan people called tent-dwelling Kurds. When we pay attention to the fact that according to the geography of Hamshan, the majority of the population has unfavorable characteristics of sheltering, then it can be said that the Islamization of Hamshanians did not happen at the expense of the resettled people, but as a result of the Islamization of the Christian Hamshanians, Armenians living in the region. One of the influential factors in the process of Islamization of the region is the annual increase of the Muslim Hamshan Armenians, as well as the fact that as a result of the increase, they began to migrate the Christian Hamshan Armenians to the west. There are records in the Ottoman archives to the effect that in Hodogchur, due to the intervention of the villages of Chamuchu, Catholic Armenians, the law and order was violated. Having this information in mind, we can say that the Islamization process of Hamshan, which started after the region came under Ottoman rule, was completed in 1915 with the genocide of the last Christian Hamshan people and the migration of the survivors to the opposite shore of the Black Sea. There is an episode about the Armenians who lived in Baku in the film The Last Repair Store, recognized as Best Documentary Short at this year's in Oscar. The film premiered on September 1, 2023 at the 15th Telluride Film Festival. In November 2023, The Last Repair Shop was named the Best Documentary Short at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards in New York. The action of the film takes place in Los Angeles. It tells the story of Steve Bahramian, the manager of the student musical instrument repair shop. He was born and raised in Baku, but in 1987, then repressions and pogroms against Armenians began in Baku. Every day it became more dangerous and people were afraid to live there. My father was an optimist. He said, "I will not go anywhere and I have not done anything bad to anyone so that they would upset us." He was killed at the workplace, says the hero of the film, unable to hide his excitement. The film is directed by Ben Prudfoot and Chris Bowers. As of February 16, 2024, the film has been shown over 700 times in the United States and Canada. The collective monograph Megalithic Culture of Artsakh was published. The book is dedicated to the megalithic monuments of Artsakh. The hitherto unknown megalithic monuments in the territory of Artsakh are presented. Menhirs, dragons, sigils, rock formations, stone piles, towers, dolmen-type structures. Orthophoto plans, displacements, and distribution maps of the monuments were made. The book is an important contribution to the field of research on the ancient culture of Artsakh. This was all for today. Goodbye.
Oda da dinç genes, oda da dinç genes, oda da